After a loss to a Super Bowl contender with a backup quarterback, there are plenty of things to raise eyebrows at. The true question is the sky really falling? What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to another edition of Jet Nation Radio. We are your hosts, Dylan Terman and Glenn Naughton. No Chris Schubert tonight. He's attending to other work issues, so just the two of us. Um, Kind of a rough one to come off of, Glenn. I know you weren't here with us last week to preview the Cowboys game, but we had Jesse Holley, former wide receiver, thanks to you. He came on the show and he broke down the game with us, and we were right. He was right. The final score we all predicted right in favor of the Cowboys, but what's your thoughts come right out of this game?
Um, I mean, disaster in so many ways, you know? I mean, you kind of, you know, as you said, it's one game, and that's kind of, I've been pretty bipolar on this team since this loss. Like, one minute I'm like, it's one game, relax, and then the next minute I'm like, this is a, goddamn disaster. How does this happen? And I keep kind of flip-flopping back and forth, and after hearing the coaches speak today, um, specifically Nathaniel Hackett, I'm kind of stuck in a what the hell is going on mood. Because look, yeah, it's one game, but it's not his first day on the job. Like he should going into this game, if dopey bloggers like me can say before the game, damn, you better load up on tight ends and run the ball because this team, Brees Hall is your best player, and this team can get after the quarterback, so let's run it. And he gives Brees Hall the ball 4 times, and then, his excuse is we didn't run enough plays. Well, you ran almost 50. It's not like, you didn't run 6 plays, and that's why Brees Hall only got 4 carries. Samini tweeted they ran 49. PFF showed their starting linemen as having 47 snaps each. So whatever it was, say it was 47. You ran 47 plays, and that's the excuse you're giving as to why your best running back only had 4 carries. And just a lot of dumb stuff. So pretty frustrating. And again, it's not like it's his debut. He's been a coordinator before, and he's supposed to be a bright guy. And you know, I think that's what Gase used to do a lot. That was a big Adam Gase move. Oh, things weren't going the way we hoped. Well, dude, you call the plays. You decide which ones get run. You can't be like, well, we didn't throw the ball to Mecole Hardman because we only had so many plays. And of those 20 some pass attempts, 3 of them couldn't be to Mecole Hardman. There couldn't be an end around to Mecole Hardman. Like, it's a weird thing. Like, you're in charge and you're like, oh, like talking about it like you have no control over it. And that gave me like disgusting Adam Gase flashbacks.
Yeah, definitely. It was tough watching the game. I'll say that from an offensive perspective, and nobody's going to sit up here. I think both of us, when the hire was made or even floated out there, we both said, "Hey, Hackett's not our choice of guy. Although if it does lead to Rodgers, we can understand the path of why they would choose Nathaniel Hackett. Obviously, you get Rodgers, you don't have Rodgers after 4 plays, and now Nathaniel Hackett is stuck coaching another quarterback with the last name Wilson and trying to make him look good. And it kind of happened a little bit for 45 minutes, but it was not because of the game plan. The game plan was the thing that really pissed me off in this game. Too much 11. When you look at last week against Buffalo, which a great game plan on the fly, when your backup quarterback gets thrust out there, you say, hey, we're going to do the smart thing and take wide receivers off, and we're going to put tight ends on the field because this is going to play to the strength of not only Zach Wilson in our offense, but it's going to play to the strength of the Bills. So they do that. They go out in 12-13 and they win. Now, flip to this week, they go 75% 11 personnel and 5 plays in 12, and less than that in all the other categories of personnel packages you could use. So that's not good for the tight end perspective. I understand. I listened to the post game or the press conference he did today, and I heard we corrected it. We watched the tape. We're going to, do better, blah, blah, blah. But it is kind of we all sat here and said, just run 12, 13 personnel again this week. Just do the same thing, copy and paste that you did against Buffalo, and you'll have a chance to beat Dallas. Nobody sat up here and said well, normal thinking people like you and I weren't saying the Jets were going to beat Dallas unless a lot of key things happened. And a lot of that was putting Rucker on the field, Uzama, Conklin, all of those guys on the field, helping your tackles with Micah Parsons. And it just didn't happen. So I'm
And
definitely
it's not a
frustrated.
correction that should have to be made. Like,
No,
you
it
got it
shouldn't be.
wrong.
Yes, exactly. You got it wrong from the get-go. And I understand he said they underestimated his speed even when they were running quick game offense. And I'm not going to say that that's an egregious error because it doesn't need to be stated. That's an egregious error to underestimate anybody of Micah Parsons' caliber. But when you're trying to run quick game with a quarterback that throws the ball in over 3 seconds time to snap in Zach Wilson, it's not going to work. Quick game is not a very good part of his game. When he can get to the back of his 5-step drop and make a good pass, that is the type of game he needs. So I don't know, just the whole game plan really pissed me off. I had a stat about the running backs and the running back usage in 12 and 13 personnel. So in scenarios when you would assume the Jets are running shorter yard situations, maybe a 2nd and 5, a 3rd and 1, whatever, they go 12 or 13 personnel, more tight ends. 32 snaps. 22 went to Dalvin Cook. 10 went to Breece Hall. And this is the 2-game sample size. That is just not using your guys right. And I understand Dalvin Cook could be a good back out of 12 or 13 personnel if you just, do a wide zone and let him cut. But they're running a lot of gap stuff with Dalvin Cook, according to PFF as well. So that's not really playing to his strengths either. And I feel like if you could just get Breece Hall in those short yard situations, I had a lot of people on Twitter yelling at me about pitch count and this and that. And I said it's not about Cook getting more snaps in these personnel packages. Is just the fact that it's gross. 22 to 10 should be more like 17 to 15. It should be much more 50-50 because that's what Breece does better. Run behind these big guys, find the open lane and go. Dalvin Cook doesn't really do that. So that was definitely the biggest area of concern for me offensively.
Yeah, and how many times? I mean, it wasn't a ton, but you couldn't block anyone on the rare occasions you had help, and then you start going empty backfield. You start going 5 wide, and I'm like, what are you doing? You're doing the opposite. And listen, I say, I try to make a point of saying, I I don't pretend to be an NFL head coach or an NFL coordinator. Yes, and I say all the time, these guys know a million times more about football than I do. But things like get the ball to your best players, like, do I have to be an NFL head coach to say that? To know that? To know that Breece Hall is infinitely better than Dalvin Cook, who's at 2.3 yards a carry right now? But here we are. Another it's like these guys, they just gotta, overthink it and like, oh, smartest guy in the room. Well, everyone's thinking we'll do this or we'll do that. Well, yeah, they're thinking you'll do that because it would make sense. Like, and I listen, it's only 2 games. I don't know how much. I don't know if this is all we're gonna get from Dalvin Cook, 2.5 yards a carry. But I didn't love the signing, and that's when I thought he was gonna be better than this. Like, I thought he would definitely be, serviceable. I thought a really good option as a number 2 back. Now you're using him as your number 1, and he's averaging less than 2.5 a carry for what, $9 million, $7 million. It's
Yeah, I mean, I still have a little bit of hope for Dalvin Cook only because you have to see him behind an offensive line that's more functionable than what we currently have. If they go out against the Patriots, which is a better opponent matchup wise than the Cowboys is for this offensive line, and they look a little bit better and they can, just get those couple holes. I just want to see Dalvin Cook hit the hole and go. And I feel like he hasn't even had the opportunity to do it because as soon as he's handed the ball, it's either a stretch play where somebody's getting blown up like Uzama on the first play of the game, or just right up the gut, and he's tackled as soon as the ball hands it is right in his gut. So it doesn't matter like the situation that he's put in. He just hasn't been able to get what he does best on the field. I did want to mention, the blockers. So you mentioned it, keeping just 5 guys on the field, just your 5 offensive linemen. So according to my offensive play charting, 50 plays, that's 2 pre-snap penalties, and then obviously the fake punt we threw in there. 14 plays, they had 6 or more blockers. So that's 28% of your plays. against a guy like Michael Parsons and a D line like the Cowboys. I don't understand it. Maybe they had just too much trust in Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton, and it wasn't really Mekhi Becton. It was more everybody else. Even AVT got his Connor McGovern. That video I know is going viral of Parsons doing that. And if people would just follow the league in general, Myles Garrett did that 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
In week one, he did it, I believe, against the
Yep.
Cincinnati Bengals, except he was simulating like a crossover in
Yep.
basketball. So he was much more disrespectful with it, and he got the sack. All right. Micah did all that and embarrassed Connor, just got a pressure. I understand, but like this happens in the NFL. These are game wreckers. They're going to wreck the game. The Jets just did nothing to combat it. So I don't know. I felt like there wasn't enough good answers for me in the press conference, but I also can give them a little bit of leeway because I have questions about this defense too, and we'll get into that in a second. But was there anything left from this offense that you wanted to touch on, even if it was like Zach Wilson, and start some debates in the chat?
No, I mean, like I said, the lack of carries for Brees,
Hmm.
the lack of extra blockers on the line, and yet Zach was okay. As I said, post game, it's with Zach, the sort of the detractors are just kind of moving the goalposts now because all
Hmm.
we've been saying for all this time is, got a dominant run game. We have a dominant defense. Just manage the game, Zach. That's all we're asking, and we can win. Well, he managed the game, and you were down 30-10. And then he just had to start chucking it up there. And, we threw the 3 late picks that and I said earlier in the week, if people wanna make a big deal about that, go right ahead, but I think Robert Saleh hit the nail on the head there. The game was over. He's trying to make a play. One of them was the miscommunication with Michael Carter. So really only one of those throws was really bad. That was, to me anyway, the one to Garrett, which, if he doesn't get so much air under it, that's a touchdown. But, yeah, I mean, he's trying to do too much late in the game, down by 20 because nothing else is going right. And if they don't run the ball 25, well, I mean, with the weather, they might have to run the ball 40 times this week.
Yeah.
The weather may force them to play to their strengths, so that wouldn't be a bad thing. Um, but yeah, that would be my main issue is not getting the ball to your best players, and the lack of not using the extra blockers on the O line that we said before the game would be a key.
Yeah, if Mother Nature on Sunday, puts a wrench in the Jets' offensive game plan, but it ends up being a run heavy, 12, 13 personnel game plan, I'd be super happy with that. The one thing I did want to bring up as I pop up the personnel usage on the screen here for the YouTube viewers, the wide receiver bullet right there. The snap distribution for two wide receivers, both your slot guys. Randall Cobb, 23 reps. He only got one target on 18 routes. And Mecole Hardman, who got one target in complete garbage time for 6 yards on 13 routes run. So Mecole Hardman versus Randall Cobb. I'm ready to throw in the towel on Randall Cobb. He was an Aaron Rodgers guy, excuse me, and I just don't see the threat of Randall Cobb making a difference when you have a guy, excuse me, like Mecole Hardman who can make a defense play a little bit more honest and trust that, the deep ball could happen. So I feel like this is an obvious one, but is Mecole Hardman due to get 23 snaps instead of 14?
Well, I wonder if Mecole Hardman would be that guy. Like, do they view him as a slot guy or a boundary guy when he is on the field if they pull Cobb? Because to me, I'm glad you brought up Cobb because I mentioned this a couple days ago that there are, y- you know, everyone was fine with Aaron Rodgers picking and choosing who was on this roster after you went and got him. But now you've got a bunch of guys who, without Aaron Rodgers, aren't very good. Um, you know, when you're arguably the most accurate passer in NFL history, you can have a guy like Randall Cobb or a guy like Alan Lazard and guys that don't create a ton of separation because you don't need a ton of separation to deliver the football. Um, you've got, I mean, it could be the same situation with Hackett. This could be a guy who Rodgers carried and became good friends with, so wanted him, on this staff. Obviously he came here first, but as you said, that was kind of part of the ploy to get Rodgers here.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Cobb, listen, he's not scaring anyone. Let's face it, if Aaron Rodgers wasn't a Jet right now, Randall Cobb wouldn't be in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's he had 400 yards last year. Um, he's he's up there in years, and I would rather see someone like Xavier Gibson. I mean, thank goodness at least, that was one of my fears when they added Cobb as training camp was rolling along, and I remember thinking, if they cut this electric young kid to accommodate Randall Cobb to make
Hmm.
Aaron Rodgers happy, like, you're really doing stuff that's detrimental to the team. Um, so it's gonna be interesting because if these guys aren't playing well, Billy Turner's another one. Like, he's Aaron's buddy, but look at his numbers. Like, he gives up a lot of hits and a lot of pressures, when he's playing tackle. So he's another one, like, not a very good player, but a very good friend of Aaron's. Well, Aaron's not here, but he's still on the roster, and is he gonna get pissed off if you bench Randall Cobb, or if Randall Cobb isn't getting the reps he feels he deserves? So are the Jets still gonna walk this, keep Aaron happy tightrope while he's not even with the club? It's not a great position to be in.
Yeah, obviously, when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers who can elevate the play of everybody on the offense around him, it's easier to justify a guy like Randall Cobb making the 53 over Xavier Gibson, like I did all August, and just basically wrote it off like they're gonna do this again with another UDFA, and they're gonna let him go, and Randall Cobb's gonna be okay with Aaron, but now you don't have Aaron, and the margin for error has become so much slimmer that with Zach Wilson that these guys aren't making a difference. And I'm not saying Mecole Hardman is all world or can, do things that nobody else can do at the wide receiver position, but you don't know until you try. And sometimes you just got to put speed out there and see what can happen. I feel like because the fact that he was running with the twos a lot in camp, because Randall was with the ones with Rodgers, he could have chemistry with Zach. I don't know necessarily, but when you have Cobb having 2 targets and like 56 snaps played over 2 games, and Mecole Hardman comes in complete garbage time and he's already getting targets on 13 routes run, I feel like, you know, Zach could look to him easier in like a quick flat pass because he's going to get there faster. So just it's little tiny things that you just sit there and observe that really just frustrate you. And I don't want to harp too much on it because it's 2 games, but the game plan on both sides was just really bad. Um, with that, we could flip over to the defense. And the first thing I have to say, Michael Clemens had 41 snaps in this game on defense. Michael Clemens does not play 41 snaps on this defense. I don't know why they decided that this was the game to do it because Dak and everybody had the perfect counter. The quick game, the quick passing in the flats, in the swing. They made it look silly. Obviously, our front four was still getting home, but it's not. If you just kept your front four the same way and you didn't pressure, I feel like maybe Michael Clemens was the reason you're pressuring with more because you're lacking up front with your front four. Just drop your 7 in coverage and play the 4 that you normally do and just let them get home. I feel like even on defense they overthought this whole thing. So what were your thoughts on defense?
Well, I think Dallas did what we talked about during the offseason, and I said many times that, every time I brought up and say, what's my number one concern about this Jets team, even, calling them a Super Bowl contender. And my number one concern was teams dinking and dunking and shredding this defense underneath because that was probably the area where the Jets were most vulnerable. So it, a team like that, when Dallas does that, when they have these quick drops and quick throws, you neutralize the pass rush. And like look at Quinnen Williams. He had a monster game. He was phenomenal, but he didn't really get a lot of opportunities to get to the quarterback because the ball was out so quickly. So, I mean, Dallas did a nice job, especially early on. Dallas running the ball up the middle. They were doubling both the Jets tackles and moving the pile, doing a really good job. But later on in the game, Quinnen picked it up and started making some plays. But this D line, it's one of those things. It doesn't matter who you have in there. If the ball's coming out that quickly, guys aren't going to get to the quarterback. And that's, we'll get into it in a bit, but that is what worries me most about this game this week. And until the Jets find an answer, it's what is going to worry me. I saw Jamie and Sherwood had a really high snap count. Figured maybe they thought maybe, an athletic guy, as we know, converted safety, maybe he'd do a good job underneath. Didn't really seem like he made much of a difference. And it's back to a point where I was hoping we wouldn't see the Jets again, but it was one of those things where when I watched the game, especially when I rewatched it, all 22 and stuff like that, it's back to you watch the game and you feel like the Jets have or you feel like Dallas has an extra defender on the field because when the Jets offensive players are getting the ball, they have nowhere to go and they're just surrounded by defenders. And then when Dallas has the ball, you feel like the Jets are playing with 9 on defense because every time someone catches the ball, there's just space all around them. And you just think, how is this happening again? Like every year for the past however many years, every time I watch this team, you feel like the defense has extra guys for the other team, and you feel like the Jets offense is a couple guys short. It and it just never changes.
Yeah, this game particularly frustrated me because every time the Jets sent a pressure, and the Jets, I said this on Buffalo's podcast on Monday, Buffalo Jet fan and I, they when they do a pressure look, they don't hide anything. They just come at you. If they're gonna bring a guy down to blitz, like the guy's gonna blitz. So they just send the guy, and Dak knows that he's gonna be hot off his left or right side, and he's gonna put a route or have a route already built in. Mike McCarthy just coached circles around our defensive coaches, every single one of them. So and that's not like Mike McCarthy is not some crazy great head coach. He's a very good head coach, but he's not like anything that you should have to fear that badly. And he just ran circles around him. So every time they sent the pressure, it was an easy ball out right there. And that goes back to my saying, just rush home with your 4. You have 7 now in coverage. You don't feel like you're depleted, and you can just stop them as soon as they make the tackle. Just bend, don't break. That leads me to my next point: 7 missed tackles. You can't have that. And 2 were on Eccles, so you can slightly excuse that because it's a backup role. But still, you can't have 7 missed tackles and expect to beat a team that's dinking and dunking under 10 yards. I put out Dak's spray chart from Next Gen Stats on Twitter, and he
Saw
had
that.
25 of his 38 passes behind 10 yards or behind the line of scrimmage even. Flip over to Mac Jones week 1 against the Eagles. He had 54 pass attempts. Like 30 of them were within 10 yards. So
Hmm.
that's the recipe. And if the Jets can't figure it out, it's going to get bad. And I don't
Everyone's gonna do it.
yeah, and that's putting a lot more stress on guys like Quincy Williams, Michael Carter II, CJ Mosley, potentially Jamie Sherwood if they're going to be in a 4-3 base when they do it. So all these guys that we had questions about coming into the summer, all the other than Michael Carter, obviously our linebackers and our safeties, Tony Adams is hurt. All these guys come into question when they have to do that type of stuff to beat the Jets defense. Now,
Now, what do you? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, 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 you're fine. Ask your question because it's
No,
kind of
I
leading
was gonna
into.
say defensively, what do you think about the unwillingness, like, the stubbornness to say we're sticking with the scheme, even though this team only has 1 receiver who can beat us, and he's got 3,000 yards today, we're not gonna put sauce on him because that's not what we do. Like, how about saying, "Oh, what we do isn't working, so what else can we do?" Oh, we've got Sauce Gardner, the all-pro defensive rookie. How about we put him on the only guy they have who's catching the football? No, you know what? We'll let CJ Mosley cover him. We'll let Eccles cover him. And he's just toasting you up and down the field. And I know Salah was asked about it, and he's been asked in the past, and they always say we don't do that. Not to get too far ahead, but I'm looking at the schedule and thinking you're playing the Chiefs in a few weeks. Like, their receivers are not good. Sauce Gardner should be on Kelsey all day long and neutralize the one threat they have. But are they going to say, no, we don't do that? And we're going to have CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams and Jordan or Tony Adams or Whitehead or whoever versus saying, you know what? This team has one weapon and we have one elite corner. Let's let him take him out of the game and then go from there. I don't like the stubbornness. Fine, if that's your scheme and it's working, fine. But when it's not, isn't that time to say, what can we do to make it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certain situations where you can sprinkle it in, like maybe on like third down when the team likes to go man. They are a very zone heavy team, and I understand what Saul was saying and Ulbrich was saying to a degree. I don't really agree with how Ulbrich necessarily said it, but I just read the quote. I didn't hear him say it, so context is kind of lost there. But it basically they're not going to change. I don't think they're going to change for the most part. But in situations like that with Kelsey, if you have a 3rd and 7, yeah, I don't see why you can't sprinkle it in every now and then. I
Because
don't
that's
think they
not what
need
we
to.
do.
Right.
That's not what we do.
I don't
We don't
think they
sprinkle
need
it
to
in.
do
We don't
it
do it at
all
all.
the time.
No
Yeah, I don't think
sprinkles.
that I don't think
No
they need to do
sprinkles.
it all the time, but then you look at the defense and I looked at the Cincy game and I compare this to the Cincy game, except they beat us passing over the middle and a little bit deeper down the field. we kind of came together after that moment. And the defense, we got the famous, we have 4 new faces in the secondary comment. That's not the case this year. We have 1 new face, Tony Adams, but I feel that type of energy is coming from the defense where it's that pivotal. We're all right. We're putting our foot in the ground. We're not letting up shit for the rest of the year, and we have to see it. Obviously, that's just my mentality about it. I have to see it first, but everything that I don't know, just kind of the history repeating itself early in the season. We were 1-2 at that point. Now we're 1-1 coming off a tough loss. And like we got the shit kicked out of us by Cincinnati that game. And everybody was down on this defense and everybody was ready to throw it out on Ulbrich. And I don't know. I'm not ready to do that either. Somebody told me on Twitter that this defense is cooked. I think you just need to sit this one out, to be completely honest. But I don't know. I feel a little bit more confident in the defense recovering way more than everything we said about the offense. And I think that it'll start if you can just do a couple little tweaks here and there, like Sauce following a guy on at least a third down, like Travis Kelce. That's definitely going to be a big one.
Yeah, and I think the track record that you look at what Ulbrich and Saleh did last year, they did a really nice job here. Whereas Hackett's track record is kind of spotty. It's in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like, yeah, great job when he was with Rodgers, but that's Aaron Rodgers. He had the one good year with Blake Bortles, but other than that, a lot of not very impressive work. So it's I get that, we can say it's week 2. It's just the decision making was just that bad that I'm like, I don't like on the one hand, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say it's just one game,
Mm-hmm.
but it was so negligent. It was so poor. You know what I mean? Like if you go for a drive with someone and they're like, "Dude, it was one bad drive." And you're like, "Yeah, you ran every red light and drove us off a cliff." Like it was only one drive, but it was that like it was horrendous and you did everything wrong. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what they did. So it's like on the one hand, benefit of the doubt, but on the other hand, what the hell were you doing? And like is does Jeremy Ruckert get a target this year? Like, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ruckert isn't good, but I thought coming out of Ohio State, the guy had incredible hands. Some of the
Mm-hmm.
catches he made were off the charts, ridiculous. And with this team, he can't get a target. It's. But again, they only ran 47 plays, so there weren't enough plays to throw a ball to Jeremy Ruckert.
And I tweeted this mid game because I had to go back on the commercial and make sure that my eyes weren't deceiving me. Nathaniel Hackett ran 5 wide from 13 personnel. He had, I think it was Cook far left, Conklin, Lazard, and then he had Rucker and Uzoma. And I was like, dude, what the hell is this formation? And like, I get it. Like, I've been reading Bobby Peters' complete guide to the Packers 2020 because it's got a lot of Hackett and Rodgers stuff in there, and they do a lot of that weird stuff with the flexing out of the running backs and the tight ends, but when you have Zach Wilson back there, your game plan has to change, and you have to use your guys for their strengths. And Jeremy Ruckert was our best run blocker by far week 1. You got to just
By
copy and
far,
paste, copy and paste that
he was a
game plan.
monster.
Yeah, and I agree. That's that. Other than Randall Cobb, that's the one that's really getting to me. And I was okay on Uzoma coming in. I said probably midseason, Ruckert would take over as tight end 2. Some wanted to say tight end 1, and you know what? He's shown flashes that if he can just catch the ball when he's targeted, if we ever see that opportunity, like you said, maybe he could be tight end 1 in this offense. But he looks like tight end 2 through 2 games, and that's not even a question. I understand Uzoma's leadership role in this team as a
Mhm.
veteran. He's the rah-rah guy, and, he had good relations with Rodgers, and that was probably a chemistry thing building for that era of Jets football that we didn't get to see. And I think that that's been a hard adjustment for everybody on this team to just mold back into 2022 in the time machine. It's kind of weird. They built the time machine at Florham Park. They went back to 2022, and we're just right back here with Zach Wilson. So it's going to be an adjustment, and this is the week to do it. We're going to
Yeah,
flip
and
right
I'm
there.
I'm I'm starting to get I'm starting like with Robert Saleh, I'm starting to get these vibes like, how there are some coaches who like it takes the end of the world for them to bench a veteran. Like
Yeah, that's
they're
Dwayne
gonna
Brown.
yeah,
That's Dwayne Brown right now.
I think and possibly to some degree Uzama, right? But I
Yeah.
think we're gonna see guys who
Yeah,
some
well, he made the
coaches
comment on Ruckert, so that makes me happy that they saw that and Ruckert, and he was asked, and he said, "I want to get Ruckert more on the field." So that at least makes me happy.
yeah.
Dwayne Brown, I don't know, that doesn't like they signed Cedric Abuye. He's probably not going to play, but I tweeted
No.
it out. He's going to be the starter against Kansas City if he's healthy. Dwayne Brown. They're not going to do it yet. This guy's going to have to be cooked beyond cooked before they put him out to pasture. And I raised my hand. I was wrong on Dwayne Brown, absolutely, through 2 games. I said he was going to be our second best offensive lineman. That was before Mekhi Becton, became a starter, and it hasn't looked that way. He might be our sixth best offensive lineman.
Yeah,
Somebody that hasn't played could be better.
I just had him as a huge question mark, like a guy
Yeah,
who could be anywhere from slightly above average to slightly below. But my biggest question with him was at his age, like guys, when they get up to that age, they can drop like in a hurry,
yeah.
go from being effective to completely useless, and that's kind of how he looked. But right now, Robert Saleh will be able to say a few things. Dwayne's coming back off an injury. Dwayne didn't have a training camp. Dwayne didn't get to play in the preseason. He's getting the rust off. Dwayne's a little older. So I think he's going to make every excuse in the book for him. And I think Dwayne's going to get 4 or 5 weeks of, if he doesn't get better, I think they'll give him 4 or 5 weeks of really bad play before they'll look elsewhere. Um, I mean, if Billy Hunter is the alternative, I mean, why
Billy
make a
Turner.
change? Like, oh yeah, it's a Billy Turner. Sorry. I mean, if Billy I'm thinking of Wayne Hunter. Easily confused, right?
Oh
But
gosh.
if you're gonna go with that guy, I mean, my hope is that Carter Warren comes off IR at some point and and impresses enough to take the job if they're gonna switch out. Um, if they're gonna make a switch at left tackle, I don't get leaving Becton at right tackle. Like he's a proven guy who can play on the left side. They do a lot of things where you kind of get the impression they're not really that bothered. Like win, lose, we're just gonna want to make sure everybody has fun. We're not necessarily gonna put the best players in the best spots because someone's feelings might get hurt. So this is kind of where we are. And yeah, twisted. You're a little pissed off, and I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to be mad. I think I guess it depends on what you're mad at, because if you went into the Dallas game and you said that the Jets were still a Super Bowl contending team, they just beat Buffalo. If that was your mindset, then yeah, unfortunately, you're going to be really pissed off. But if you came in with the mindset of Zach is still Zach with maybe a couple steps improvement, and this is hopefully a playoff team with Zach Wilson, then you were able to get over it a little bit faster, and that's kind of where I was at. With the offensive line, though, I feel like when you start making the changes, you can't stop making the changes, because say they do just for one game want to move Mekhi Becton to left tackle, and we'll just say Tippmann right guard and AVT right tackle. And then Dwayne Brown comes back and he's healthy, and they obviously want to play him. Are they going to move him back to left tackle and then Mekhi back to right tackle? So I'm not saying that I agree with it. I also am just saying that it's not as easy as like switching the position and making it work. These guys really just need time on task together. And if you're going to make a change, I'd rather it just be a well calculated change and not just we have an injury, let's just shuffle and do. Some teams it works well for. The Green Bay Packers can kind of, versatile offensive linemen, they can do that. The Jets don't
Well,
really
that's the
have
thing. The Jets have versatile linemen. You know,
interior. Yeah, they have yeah.
AVT can play both guard spots, both
See,
tackle spots.
yeah, I would make
Weitz can play
AVT
center
the
and
left
guard.
tackle. I would make
McGovern can play center
AVT
and guard.
Yeah, I would make AVT the left tackle if they were going to make a change to substitute Brown out and they want to keep Becton at right tackle. I would just put AVT at left tackle and have Tippmann take in at right guard. That's what I would do personally. And then because AVT is pretty good and good enough to switch back week to week like we saw last year, you don't want to do it, but that's the guy you want to do it with. I don't think Becton is the guy you want to flip-flop back and forth week to week. So that's just kind of my stance. Up on the screen
Yeah, I would
here.
because he's done it, and he did in the preseason. He played both
Right.
spots in the preseason. They flipped him all the time at Louisville, so he's actually done that exact thing. So I mean, if we want to if the goal is to limit the number of guys you have to move, you could say, even though neither tackle is great in terms of the depth guys, Turner or Mitchell, I would rather they be at right tackle than left, and have
Mhm.
Becton on the left side. But we'll see. I think Saleh is just going to give all these veterans, as many snaps for as long as he can justify having them on the field. That's what he's going to do.
Yeah, and I think to a degree, you kind of have to play your veterans until, some like to do it till all hope is lost. Obviously, Jets fans want to pull the plug after one bad game, but what's the alternative? You put in a Billy Turner or a Max Mitchell and they're ass, and they prove to you that they're a backup for a reason. So it's opening a can of worms that I think Dallas is not the team we need to start breaking everything down because of. They're an elite front. They did a lot of bad things. Our coaching shit the bed. So a lot of bad things happened in that one, and that's why we called it burn the tape, because after this, we hope we never have to talk about that game again, because things are going to swing in the up. And we're going to end this losing streak against the New England Patriots. If you're watching on YouTube, I have the injury report, today's injury report up on the screen. You will see Dwayne Brown with a shoulder and a hip injury. The hip is new. The shoulder is the one that he had repaired from last season. He was a do not participate. Tony Adams with his hamstring was a do not participate. Those are the two biggest ones in question for this Sunday's game. And then you have 6 players on the limited list. Obviously, Breece Hall, Mekhi Becton, they're kind of going through their rehab process. Saleh said it's going to be a normal thing for them. Greg Zerloin back up on the limited with a groin. John Franklin Myers, who did not practice yesterday, was limited today. So that's a positive sign that he's on track for the game. Michael Carter II had a limited participation with an elbow that he suffered in the game. He should be okay. They said he could have went back in the game, but they held him out. And then Quincy Williams, who many feared to have a pretty serious injury, ended up not having as serious as they thought. 2 limited participations this week. He should be up for this game. Flip it over to the Patriots. I'm not going to read through everybody, but the ones that did not participate this week, one defensive lineman, Devon Godshaw, their special teams returner, Marcus Jones, with a shoulder, and offensive lineman, Sidy Sal, with a concussion. So looks like they might be without their special teams guy, might be without a defensive lineman as well. They have a couple guys, Michael Onwenu, Trent Brown on the limited list. And I think that if this offensive line can't go for the New England Patriots, this is no excuses. Absolutely no excuses. So we flip it over to the tail of the tape, as we've done the past 2 weeks. Last week we had Jesse to kind of poke holes in the boat. This week we don't have a opposite team contributor to poke holes in the boat. So Glenn and I are just going to run free and kind of poo-poo all over the Patriots and hope that the Jets show good and actually beat this team for once in 7 years. And we're going to start at the top. Quarterback position. Chris and I said it last week. We thought we could plug and play the Jets as the leading person in this category, or at least a push. Not the case. Not even against McCorkle. It's not going to happen. Zach Wilson is not better, so the Patriots get that. Any arguments there, Glenn?
No, none whatsoever.
Yeah, we're gonna move right along. We've talked about Zach enough, I feel. Running back flips back over to the Jets' fortune. And this is with the caveat that they just need to be used properly. If the Jets running backs get used properly, there's no reason they can't be better than Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott. I like Ramondre Stevenson. I wasn't a fan of signing Zeke Elliott when that rumor came about, but I'm kind of a slight fan of this backfield. Maybe they are old and kind of washed. I'm not sure, but I like Ramondre. What are your thoughts on the backs, and is this kind of a blowaway for the Jets?
Yeah, I think Stevenson's a really good player. Runs hard, runs with power, and I think the Jets have the edge because really, I think Zeke is, he doesn't have much left. I think the depth and the combination for the Jets. I think Hall, Cook, Carter is the better group. But again, if Breece Hall gets 4 more carries this week, then the Patriots get the edge. There's way you can have a group that's more talented, but if the coaching staff doesn't play them, then obviously that's going to switch things up.
Yeah, and as you see, as we go out throughout the tail of the tape, certain categories are going to be more heavily weighted in this matchup. Like obviously the top one there, quarterback. It's not good to have a quarterback disadvantage despite having 3 out of 5 offensive advantages. So you'll see it even last week. There were some slides in there that you knew were going to be the difference, and coaching was the one where it's got to be the Cowboys, and we didn't think it was going to be that bad because we just figured, it was going to be close throughout. You could possibly make a couple Dak turnovers, and no. So it really depends on where you get your influence here, because running back and wide receiver, as we'll get into, don't really mean much if your quarterback can't hit them. So Jets, I think this is a runaway. The Patriots do not have a good wide receiver group at all. Kendrick Bourne is kind of the top guy. Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster, who I believe has been slightly banged up throughout the preseason and early season parts of this year. So not really, enthused by that group. And you look over to the left, other than Garrett Wilson, I'm not enthused either. I don't really, I mean, Alan Lazard has surprised me from a perspective of getting open and actually catching the ball. His catch rate is pretty, poor for his career. And then Randall Cobb doesn't inspire me like we've talked about. So hopefully next week we can swap out Cobb's name with Hardman and move forward with a slightly more improved wide receiver unit. This one, tight end, we talked about in the pre-show. We had to give it to the Patriots. I think the tight ends for the Jets could be better and probably should be better if they had a competent quarterback again. But I still think Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki give you a bigger 1-2 punch than what the Jets have. So what are your thoughts on the tight ends?
Yeah, I think the Patriots tight ends are going to have the ability to give the Jets fits, especially Gesicki. Guy's 8 feet tall, super athletic. The Jets are going to have a hard time covering him. And but again, I think the Jets, if their tight ends were deployed, if they were if they were made a part of the offense, I would imagine it'd be a much closer call, and I might even give the Jets the edge, especially if you went Conklin, Ruckert, Uzama in terms of the depth chart. But as it currently stands, with Uzama being tight end too, and the Jets not really utilizing the tight end, you got to give the Patriots the edge. And Gesicki's a guy when he was coming out of college. It's funny that he landed with the Patriots after the Dolphins and I think I even tweeted at the time something like, "I know he's not going to the Jets, but as long as he doesn't come to the AFC East, I'll be happy." And all he's got to do now is play for the Bills, and he'll have covered
Yep.
the whole division. He hasn't been as good as I thought he would be, but again, I wonder if that's a product of offensive scheme because that guy just his physical tools are off the charts, and he's clearly a decent football player. It's not like he's a guy. Sometimes you draft an athlete who's just not a football player.
Mm-hmm.
But Gesicki's proven he can make plays and catch the ball. He'd have a ton more targets if that guy was on my team.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins didn't really use him properly from a scheme standpoint with Mike McDaniel. So kind of got phased out there. Now he's with New England, who they had Johnny Smith prior. They had him and Hunter Henry. So now they just plug in Mike Gesicki. Yeah, I think if he's the matchup because he is so tall. Like, do you put Michael Carter the second on him? That's very tough. Brandon Eccles is your backup slot if Carter can't go. He's also pretty small. Jordan Whitehead is pretty small. So like you have small guys to go up against big slots. And I think that's the one area of weakness from a sneaky matchup perspective. Um, Last one on offense here, offensive line. Despite everything we talked about and how bad it was against Dallas, I think it's better than the Patriots. They have Vidarian Lowe and Calvin Anderson as their bookend tackles for this game. And like I said, there are no excuses. If you can't get home on Mac Jones and not get I mean, JFM's roughing the passer was clearly legal and they said it was. So if that happens again, there's not really much you can do, but you need to affect Mac Jones. If he's throwing the ball 30 plus times in this game, you need to affect Mac Jones. And this offensive line, that I think you can do. The interior is pretty good with Strange, David Andrews, and Michael Onwenu if they all play. But those ends, you got to get off the end with Bryce Huff, Jermaine Johnson, not Michael Clemens for 41 snaps. You got to have your speed guys out there. So despite all the doom and gloom for the offensive line, what are your thoughts putting the Jets up above the Patriots?
Yeah, I'd put the Jets above the Patriots, but I think the excuse we're gonna have this week is that similar to Dallas, it's gonna be quick drops, quick throws. Guys are gonna have a hard time getting home. And again, as we said earlier, they're saying this typhoon or whatever is heading up to the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody posted, it might have been the Jet Nation account, as a matter of fact. Mac Jones' box score from the last time he played a game with 50-mile-an-hour winds. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, against the Buffalo Bills. Yeah.
2 for 3. He threw
Yep.
3 passes,
And they won the game.
and they won the game. So don't be surprised
Crazy.
if you have those types of conditions. Um, don't be surprised if Buffalo runs it 85% of the time.
It's
And the
absolutely
Jets should
insane.
be doing the same, but who
You would
knows?
think. Yeah, you would think. I don't want to hear any excuses about why you can't throw the ball in the wind. Looking at you, Zach Wilson.
Jeez,
Flipping
don't.
over flipping over to the defensive side. Still, you'll see more green than you'll see blue. Starting with the defensive line, I don't think, like we said last week, Chris and I, you can't get much better than the Jets. Last week, I think the Cowboys proved they were better than the Jets in a lot of facets on the front line, on the front four. But the Jets got this one. I mean, Matt Judon is a great player. I love Josh Uche. Dietrich Wise is another good big end. And then Keon White from Georgia Tech, the rookie. I'm a big fan of those, but I don't know. Even if you don't dress one of the six that I've listed because McDonald didn't play last week, I still think you got to go Jets.
Yeah, I'm taking the Jets over that group. Although I do like Judon Uche quite a bit. White is a guy who I'm not sure how much he's even played so far, but liked what I saw from him when he was in college. The Jets group, Will McDonald, does he dress? We'll see. I mean, basically, it's as if the Jets are taking the old saying of you can never have too many edge rushers, and they're like, actually you can, because we have too many, so they can't all play, which is not ideal. Not ideal. When you're sitting your first round pick because you have too many guys that play that position, and you have other needs on the field. By the way, for anyone who's wondering, Jackson Smith and Jigba, number 2 in the NFL in separation per route. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it takes us back to the conversations we had in March and April that you have to have, even in the Super Bowl winning window, you still have to draft players that could be impact immediate players for you, not necessarily starters, but impactful players. And it didn't seem like the Jets grabbed a bunch of those this draft. Not
I
saying
mean,
Will
they
McDonald.
literally that was my number one criticism, right? And
Yep.
I know Chris said it. I think you may have mentioned it.
Yeah, we all did. Yep.
They drafted like they'd already won the Super Bowl, and they were just grabbing depth for future years to start a dynasty. And they were
Yep.
like a bunch of dudes, and you're like, how much are these guys gonna play? And now Tipman was the only active rookie last week. Well, draft pick who was active.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
else is either on the practice squad or inactive.
Yep. And usually that's okay. Like if you have, a veteran laden team, the Aaron Rodgers led team, we're not going to harp on this all season, I promise. But 1 week out and it's a terrible week, you're going to have to look back on it. But when you had all those things in place, it's justified to a degree. You still need players that are going to play. And I think we want to see Will McDonald in pads more than we want to see him in street clothes, even if that means moving on from a potential Carl Lawson who was on a milk carton in Dallas last week, 2 tackles on 23 snaps, but didn't really do anything of
Yeah, he was
substance.
invisible.
Jermaine Johnson, though, we need to talk about. He had, I think, 59 snaps, which is 68 or 69%, just around 70%. Dude is a boss. Like, he is making plays down the
He's
field.
legit, man.
Tackles and or linebackers and safeties are missing tackles, and Jermaine Johnson is running 8 yards down the field
Saw
to
that a
make the
few
play.
times.
It's absolutely insane. And people that box score hunt will say, oh, his pass rush win rate isn't great, and I'm just studying the analytics, and he doesn't look good. He looks damn good on film if you're
He
watching
does.
the all 22 of that defense. So that's somebody that needs to get his flowers because through 2 games he has been just I'll use the coach's word, strain and effort every single play from Jermaine Johnson.
Yep.
Moving on to the interior, Quinton, Al Woods, Solomon Thomas. Solomon Thomas got the only sack last week. Going up against this defensive line that could be without Devon Godshaw. He's been out with the personal injury or personal related matters. And Christian Barmore, who was on the injury report. And then they have Lawrence Guy Sr. as their third guy. It's got to be the Jets. Quinnen Williams is the difference maker here. You're not going to really, find many teams that are going to compete with what Quinnen is in a 1-to-1. So then you add in the depth of Jefferson, Woods, and Thomas. I feel like it's better than most people have. So the Jets, I feel like that was an easy interior win. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. And as we've said, they're gonna win most weeks. All again, last week I felt like they did get beat up, especially early on. The interior, we were getting doubled and pushed back consistently by Dallas. Even though they were, playing with their third guard once Chuma Edoga went down,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of embarrassing. But listen, Beatis is a nice player. Of course, Martin is what he is, and they have some studs out there, but you really thought that the Jets would be able to do some damage playing the second and third string guard, which didn't happen. But I would still take this group over most groups in the NFL.
Yeah, if the Jets could game plan for Micah Parsons like the Cowboys did for Quinnen Williams, I feel like that game could have looked completely different. But then, like you said, Quinnen still got home, 6 tackles, 57 snaps. He's averaging 70.4% of the snaps through 2 games. So keep that number in the 70s, please, Jeff Ulbrich, because Quinnen Williams needs to be out there. Linebacker position, despite how much I love CJ Mosley, the injury to Quincy Williams, and the still unknown of Jamian Sherwood through half a game in a little bit of relief duty for Quincy and a little bit of just 4-3 base play from the Jets. I have to go Patriots. I like Juwan Bentley here. I like, Jelani Tavai coming over from Detroit. I think he's just one of those face in the fan type of players that you always
Hmm.
talk about with college guys. Like he's not gonna give a shit who has the ball. He's just gonna run into you. He
I
doesn't
thought he
care.
looked really good against Miami last week.
Yep. Yep. And then Marte Mapu, Sacramento State, the safety linebacker hybrid that we liked and
Yep.
talked about profusely in the draft process. We like him as the third linebacker. So I think it's not even it's kind of close because of Mosley, but I don't think it's that close when you really break it down. What are your thoughts on linebacker?
Yeah, I agree. I think New England's got a strong group, and that's obviously Bill Belichick with his reputation as a defensive guy. He's put together a really good group there. Mapu was one of those dudes that similar to the Gesicki thing. Like I looked at him and thought, I don't want him landing in the AFC East. And
Yep.
listen, as a small school guy, he's one of those guys it's hard to find game film on. But he was the guy, honestly, I hadn't heard anything about until very late in the draft process.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a couple of draft shows within a span of 3 days, like 2 or 3 different draft shows mentioned him. Then Emery Hunt mentioned him. So I went and dug up and found what I could. And I was like, this dude isn't all over the place. That chess piece, right? The defensive coaches love to have. And he lands into win. I think that was one of the few picks. Like when New England made that pick, I tweeted out like, "Oh damn it! Like this guy, he might be a problem for a while." So, yeah, that's a good group. They play hard and a versatile group as well.
Yeah, you know that as soon as that pick came down, that Bill Belichick will eventually have this guy making tons of plays, and
Mhm.
and we'll get to him soon. But Kyle Duggar's kind of that same mold. That as soon as they drafted him, I was like, damn it, he's gonna wreak havoc in this division. And when Mapu came over from the Collegiate Bowl to the Senior Bowl, everybody was raving about him for what he did in the first bowl game, and then he comes over into the practice week of Senior Bowl, and he just kind of picks up where he left off, and he's already making highlight plays in practice. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on, even if he is in a rotational role. Secondary here, Jets get the cornerback edge. They're going to get the cornerback edge more often than not. Sauce, Reed, Carter, you can call it a bad game. Sauce let up 44 yards and Reed let up like 50. So, like, if you call that a bad game, that's fine. They didn't lose us the game. They're still CB1s. Michael Carter, the second, got hurt, and, he might not. I think he's going to play. I'm optimistic based off everything that we've been hearing that he'll play. So I'm expecting a bounce back, especially against New England's wide receivers that we talked about earlier. Flip it over to the Patriots. They're still not a bad unit. Miles Bryant, I'll talk about him first because he's playing pretty well in this scheme. Sean Wade, the Ohio State slot. I don't think they play a lot of slot. He didn't have a ton of reps based on PFF's system. So I think he's kind of just when they need to use him type of player, they go more safety heavy. But Christian Gonzalez, the Oregon corner, the rookie, kind of a special cat. He had a nice interception against Tua down the field. It was like, a jump ball with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, he's little. So, Christian Gonzalez is going to win that battle, but he's been a very good rookie so far for them. Um, your thoughts on Gonzalez in that group? And obviously, the Jets have the nod.
Yeah, Gonzalez. Yeah, you go with the Jets here, but that is a good. They have some good young players there. Gonzalez only a couple games in, and trying to think who I was listening to today. I forget somebody's. They were commenting on how well he played against Miami. I saw a few people tweet about it. Kept an eye on him when I went and watched that game earlier today. Um, and I heard someone comment today that he could be as good through his first couple games as Sauce was. And this is a guy that, I mean, what do you go eighth? I think that New England got him. But
17th,
oh, was it that late?
because they
Whatever it
traded back
was.
with from third. 13 with the Patriots or whoever had the Packers pick, and then
Right.
they jumped us for 14. They
I
originally
just
had 14, and they moved back.
Yeah, I just remember when New England got him, everybody was saying, "This is ridiculous. This guy
Yep.
is a top 5 talent."
Yep.
Um, I forgot they got him that late because, of course, they made that deal with Pittsburgh, but
Hmm.
they got a steal. They got a really good player late, and, he's looked like he's legit through his first couple games, but,
Yeah.
as a group, I would take the Jets. Like you said, the secondary gave up some yards last week, but I don't know how many people went and looked at the numbers, but, CeeDee Lamb, over half of his yards came against, CJ Mosley and Eccles. So,
Hmm.
it's not like he was beating the corners up all day.
Yeah, we had Jesse on last week, and he said that we should put the Cowboys for the cornerback room. Chris and I said it was the Jets, and we acknowledged we like Trayvon Diggs, who
Mhm.
just tore his ACL in practice. It's
Yeah.
really shitty and unfortunate for him and the projections for the season for that team. And then you have Stephon Gilmore, who I feel like 3 or 4 separate occasions people have written him off and said that he's probably cooked, and he comes back and he still does really well. And we gave the edge to the Jets, and throughout the game, Garrett Wilson was cooking these guys. He just wasn't getting the
Yeah.
ball.
I
So
know.
I stand
He was open
on
so often.
I stand on the Jets were better than the Cowboys corners, even though, like you said, the game plan wasn't to attack the corners. And we heard that in the NFL Films clips that went viral. You could do everything as soon as the CD Lamb and Dak Prescott exchange. That really wasn't about our corners. That was about the interior guys, the
Mhm.
safeties, the slot guys, the linebackers playing against him. He got DJ Reed on a slant and go one time, and it was a great play, but DJ was still there. Sauce, he didn't let up a catch on him. So, yeah, I think it's still the Jets moving forward. And then last but not least for defense, Jets aren't going to get this one. Tony Adams is hurt. Jordan Whitehead, Adrian Amos came in and played decent. I think he had one missed tackle, which was kind of egregious. And then you flip over to the Patriots, and a guy I talked about just a couple minutes ago, Kyle Duggar, just such a good player from Lenore-Rhyne. Who would have thought a guy from Lenore-Rhyne would be such a good player, but leave it to Bill Belichick to make him good. Jabril Peppers kind of bounced around from Cleveland to New England, found a role. And then Jalen Mills is their third guy based on snap shares on PFF system. So I had him in the fold. I got to go Patriots. I just got it. I love Kyle Duggar too much. I like Jordan Whitehead and the resurgence he's had. He had 2 phenomenal games, even though, he didn't get any interceptions. People think he didn't do well last week. He did very well last
He
week.
had a really good game.
Yeah, Kyle Duggar, though, I think gives the push for the Patriots.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with that, especially, Tony Adams struggled a little bit, and he's got the hamstring. If this, there's a chance if he's not feeling better, it's gonna be Jordan Whitehead and, Ashton Davis and Adrian Amos, which only makes it that much stronger for New England. Jabril Peppers, it seems like Bill Belichick, right? He just grabs these safeties that are struggling for other teams, and he turns them into quality players. I remember, Chung, the safety who they got from Philly when I think Philly just
Yeah.
released him a few years back. And, I lived near Philly at the time, and he was every day at sports radio getting killed. When are we gonna get rid of him? When are we gonna get rid of him? And then he goes
Hmm.
to New England, and, like, that Monday night, I think Monday Night Football, he makes, like, a game-clinching interception, and everyone's going crazy. Like, "Why was this guy such a bum with us?" And now and that's just Belichick does. He finds these guys who are, he thinks they can do a certain thing, and, he only uses them to do that thing. Trey Dean time, it might be.
Yeah, I had to throw it up there as we're talking about safeties. But I agree. Bill will find a guy, use a guy for like one thing,
Mhm.
and look like a genius because it works. So it's so funny how it happens. Trey Dean time, it could be. I mean, it's if Tony Adams can't go, Adrian Amos. I mean, you don't want to go in with just him and Ashton Davis, considering Ashton Davis is your special teams guy. So if he's gonna, play a ton of defensive snaps, you don't want him getting hurt and compromising special teams as well. So you want to call up a fourth safety. Trey Dean is your guy, and that would make a lot of Jets fans really excited. Um, and I'm not gonna, poo-poo on Tony Adams because he's hurt and everything like that. But I
Mhm.
haven't been totally inspired by everything that he's put on the field
Yeah.
watching the All 22. And I felt like I tweeted out in the first game, this is somebody who could have used some preseason reps. And I understand the coaches were really excited about him, but is somebody that could have been out there a couple times with the twos, even just, when he's out there and the competition is significantly lessened, we want to see, guys like him shine. Sometimes you need that in the off season, preseason to give yourself a confidence boost. So Tony Adams was kind of questionable to me, and makes this safety position really questionable. Last slide, special teams and coaching. If Greg Zerline can play, which he was limited, I think the Jets have the clear advantage. Even if they have Siebert and Morstead, I still think that's better than the two rookies. Although Bill Belichick will probably kick, 5 field goals into this typhoon wind and make me look really stupid with their rookie Ryland, the kicker. Your thoughts on special teams, if any?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think, it's gonna keep coming up. If this weather is what they think it's gonna be, I don't think anyone's gonna have an edge on special teams. If 50-mile-an-hour winds, it's gonna be who's got the wind at their back. That's who's gonna have the advantage.
Yep. Yeah, 100% agree. And special teams has decided this matchup, I think both times last year, one time last year for sure. But the Jets
Yeah.
need to be better on special teams against the Patriots. And Greg Zerline, Thomas Morstead, that gives me hope. Austin Siebert, not so much. And then the last slide here, coaching. This is clearly the Jets' advantage. No, obviously not. The Jets don't have any advantage here. When you come off a game to the Dallas Cowboys looking like you did, and now you enter, I'm not going to say the toughest challenge of your season, but the toughest monkey to get off your back of the season, it's not a good look. So the Patriots dominate in coaching here. Bill Belichick, Bill O'Brien, finally they have an offensive coordinator. Gerard Mayo, their DC. I'm not going to put Steven Belichick's name up here because I respect Gerard Mayo too much as the DC to put him as co-DC. And then Cameron Accord, I'm not sure anything about him as a special teams coordinator, but you go up against ours, Salah Hackett, Ulbrich, Boyer. Boyer probably gives you the most confidence of the coordinators, and then Salah, who we obviously know he has his in-game flaws and certain things that we don't like about him. Any problems here?
No, no, I agree. I mean, it's an obvious advantage for the Patriots.
Yeah, obvious advantage, and I think this is the area where it's going to come down to the win or the loss. If you get out coached again, and Bill Belichick is up whatever it is 38-10, and they're doing the sideline back and forth with declining penalties on punt team and this and that, and it's not going to look pretty. And I can understand Jets fans' frustrations if you come out of that game with anything other than a win. I don't want to say it's a must win, but when you put everything into context, all the losses, all the bad taste from last week you need to get out of your mouth, this becomes a must win. So what are your thoughts as far as being a must win? It's a 1:00 kickoff. Finally, I know you won't be watching the game overnight where you stay in the UK, but 1:00 kickoff, we like those.
I know. Finally won't have to stay up till 5 a.m. to watch the game. Um, I are you in terms of prediction? Is that what we're doing now? Were you ready to?
Yeah, just predictions or just thoughts in general. Like,
Yeah, listen. The weather now is going to be a huge factor. I did a pod yesterday where we did predictions at the end. I said 17-14 Jets,
mhm.
but as the day went on today, and the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I think the Jets are the better team. But until Zach Wilson does something against Bill Belichick that makes us believe he can beat him, I can't pick the Jets to beat the Patriots because you talk about must win. The Patriots are 0-2. I mean,
Yeah,
they're the much bigger must win. And Bill Belichick, this is like sort of territory he doesn't get into, and they don't lose three in a row with him. But those were the Brady days, right? So three in a row is possible. So I'll say this: I think if it I think if the rain is a big enough factor and the Jets have to run it more, I would go with the Jets. But if the weather is even just moderate, mild, like and it's and the teams are able to throw the ball, then I would go with the Pats. So let's I'm gonna pick the Jets, assuming there's torrential rain. But if there's not, I think the Pats win it. But either way, low scoring game, 13-10 type, 14-10 type of game.
yeah, I had the same thing. 14-13 was my prediction. That's obviously before the typhoon. If there are actual winds and rain that are affecting the game, I literally might say like 12-6 because
I'm thinking about putting some money on no touchdowns being scored.
Well, I was just thinking, like, what are the odds of, all the touchdowns being scored and then they just go for two and like they don't get it. So like I was thinking like 13 or not, what's that? 8 and 8 is 16. We'll say 14, but they get it with
Never,
a
never do
2 point.
math live. Never.
Yeah, no, 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 terrible. I'd say 14-6 Jets, but the Jets don't kick the extra point. This is barring the weather scenario.
Hmm.
They go 2 point conversion once and then they go for it again, 2 point conversion and miss it. So they still get 14 to the Patriots 6. That's my weather prediction, but 14-13 is my normal weather prediction. But that makes me nervous because anytime you project the Jets to beat the Patriots, you end up with some sour grapes next week. So I guess what are your final thoughts? Just give maybe one matchup for the Jets and the Patriots game that you're looking forward to the most.
Uh, well, if Calvin Anderson, if he's playing tackle for the Pats again, I'm assuming he is. Whoever's lined up on him, he was a guy that jumped out at me watching that Dolphins game. That he had a really hard time. He gave up a lot of pressures, and guys were beating him fairly regularly. And I'm watching that. I'm watching him struggle, and I'm thinking, man, if that's Jermaine Johnson or Will McDonald or hopefully Carl Lawson. Hopefully the Lawson slow start is due to no preseason reps and all that, and this is his first action. But whoever the Jets have it, coming off that edge against Anderson, I think that's going to be a key matchup.
Yeah, and I'll go with the opposite effect. Whoever is our left tackle needs to be pretty sound against Matt Judon or wherever Matt Judon is playing. If he's coming off the left side, or whoever is that left tackle for me, that's going to be the matchup that I'm really keeping an eye on. It doesn't seem like Dwayne Brown's going to go. I know Keith Carter said, they feel like he can go and he might go, but it might be Billy Turner if not. So I'll be watching Billy Turner versus Matt Judon. That'll kind of make me sick to my stomach. But if you put Jeremy Ruckert next to Billy Turner and keep him in his hip pocket all game, I would feel a lot more at ease about the situation. So tons of things to look out for in this divisional game. Obviously, the Patriots, they're 0-2. They haven't started 0-3 since Belichick's first season with the team. I think they started 0-4. So it's uncharted territories if the Jets could pull this one off. And it's unfortunate to even have to use the words pull this one off because we both feel like the Jets are the better team. They have the better players. They are more talented. The quarterback situation is not great for the Patriots. Obviously, it's better than ours, but it's winnable. This is one of those games that you look at on the schedule, even without Rodgers, as winnable. And those are the games you got to either stay until the very end or just win. And I hope they just win. So with that,
And let's not to cut you off, Dylan, but
no,
let's
you're fine.
take another minute or two here.
Yeah.
Because someone said this to me, and we were talking about Zach and how I'm like, well, you give him till the trade deadline and then see if you have to make a move. What if the weather is okay, not terrible, not so bad that it's having an impact on the game, and he has another Zach versus the Patriots type of game. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they don't score a touchdown again. He throws 2 or 3 interceptions and, say it's similar to last year's game where, the weather isn't great, but Mac Jones does fine, completes 65% of his passes, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Zach completes 46%, no touchdowns, 3 picks. Then and again, don't anyone come at me like I'm a Zach hater. My feelings on him are well documented. I'm just like that's a whole nother topic, but people need to get over like, when someone considers a potential negative thing and people are like, "Oh my god, how dare you say that?" Yeah, because nothing bad ever happens to this team, right? Everything
Right.
is always roses. Like, stuff goes wrong. And what are your thoughts? Like, because I've talked extensively about how I think Zach's improved. He's doing some things this year that he hasn't done in years past. I think he's definitely a better player. I think it's blatantly obvious. But if he goes out there and Bill Belichick just has his number and it's 120 yards, no touchdowns, 3 picks, and a loss, what do you mentally with Zach Wilson? Where does that put you? Like, oh, he's still just the same guy.
If he has the Patriots version of Zach Wilson, you got to start making phone calls because we all know Tim Boyle's not the guy. College football legend Tim Boyle is not the guy. So we all understand that part. So if Zach Wilson does go out and throw a New England type of game, yeah, you got to get on the phone. You got to start making phone calls, and teams are already, securing backup options and signing depth players. You mentioned it, Will Greer, excuse me, in the pre-show, and then
Mhm.
Brett Rippon was signed off the practice squad to the active
Yeah.
roster, and they felt like the Jets were poaching around
Yep.
for a quarterback. So it's going to be one of those scenarios where you just can't let it get off the rails. And if you get the first 3 quarters of Dallas, Zach, with a little bit more, time, a couple more plays, or you get the Tampa Bay Zach or the Pittsburgh Zach that everybody loved to talk about last year. If you get those versions of Zach Wilson, I'm cool.
You're
I'm
doing
cool till
backflips. I'm doing backflips.
yeah, I'm
If
cool
he
till
has
the bye
if he
week.
has a 2 touchdown game
Yeah,
with no picks against Belichick, that is such a reversal from it. I don't know if you heard it or saw the tweet I sent out. He's got 22 career interceptions. Almost a third of them are against New England.
7,
7 of the
yeah.
22. That's ridiculous. Almost a third
So
of his
bad.
picks against one team. They
Yep.
own him. 50% completion. It's ridiculous how bad he's been against them. And
Yep.
and he 2 starts ago, he only threw 10 passes, and he still has a third of his career interceptions against them.
Sickening. And he had that nice when they wore the black uniforms against the Patriots. He had that nice rollout to the right, and he hit Garrett Wilson down the right sideline on I think a double move, and everybody just you had that feeling. You're like, oh, Zach turned the corner. He's dialing it up on the Patriots. Like that's the team that take that monkey right off your back, Zach.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be a Jekyll or Hyde type of performance. I could see it. It's either going to be really good or it's going to be really bad. So
I I
it makes
I think it's gonna be one where it's yet another game, like this Dallas game, 70% pressure rate and nobody's open. You can't to me, you can't
yeah. If you
fairly
have that,
evaluate the guy,
no.
and I think it's gonna be the same thing this week. I think they're gonna throw it like 12 times,
Yeah, if
and
you
it's gonna
have
be
that,
run, run, run in the elements.
if you have that situation where he's pressured that much and he's your leading rusher because he's scrambling 4 or 5 times a game, it's not going to be good. And that's what I see when I looked at the box score from Dallas. I don't even need to watch the game. I could just tell if people are getting home. The Cowboys had, I think, 3 or 4 sacks. Last year, Zach, that's 8 or 9
Oh
sacks
god, yeah.
against him. He's
Yeah.
not scrambling. So you like to see the improvement, but you don't want to see him 70% pressure rate. So if that's the case again, yeah, you have no shot, kid. Like it's not even your fault. You can't even throw the pass. If you're getting to the back of your 5-step drop and you're getting tackled, it doesn't matter. And I think
Yep.
that's really hard for people to understand. So I'm not standing up here, supporting Zach further than the fact that he is the team's quarterback right now. That's about as far as the leash I got for the kid. If he goes out and has the New England game, I'll be the first one on Twitter. I'm over it. Call up Colt McCoy or anybody but Joe Flacco. Call up those guys, and we'll see what happens. So with that, I think it's a safe area to wrap before we start getting called Zach Wilson truthers in the chat. You can follow Glenn on Twitter at JNRadio_Glenn. You can follow me at DTerman. You can follow Chris Schubert at Chris Schubert_. I'm pretty sure he'll be back with us next week. Might have to do some scheduling adjustments with the show to accommodate for him, but that's all good. You can follow Jet Nation on all social media platforms at Jet Nation, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Probably got a MySpace too if you find it. And we'll talk to you next week. Let's go Jets and let's stop the streak.